位长官与现场来宾，大家早安！感谢大家参与今天的
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our fifth session of our forum. Our session today is about the implementation and practice of online safety regulation. Please welcome our moderator, Mr. Wang Zhengjia, Commissioner of the NCC. Then I would also like to invite our distinguished guests to join us on stage.
Godfrey, Executive Chairperson at Commission Namian. Mr. Godfrey, please join us on stage. Next, please welcome Benoit Loutrel, Commissioner of Outcome. Mr. Loutrel, please join us on stage. Next, please welcome Kyung-Sin Park, co-founder and director at OpenNet Korea and professor at Korea University Law School. Mr. Park, please join us on stage. Finally, please welcome Angelina Dash, project officer at Center for Communication Governance at National Law University, Delhi. Ms. Dash, please join us on stage. I
would like to invite now Commissioner Wang to moderate this panel. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our fifth session. I am the moderator of this session. My name is Wang Zhengjia. During this session, we would like to take a look at the online safety regulations around the world. We have invited 4 panelists, 2 from Europe and 2 from Asia. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Jeremy Godfrey. He is the executive chairperson of the Commission Namian. Our second panelist is Mr. Benoit Loutrel. He is the commissioner of the Regulatory Authority on Audiovisual and Digital Communications. Our third panelist is the co-founder and director of the OpenNet Korea. He is also the professor at the Korean University Law School, Mr. Park Kyung-sin. And our fourth panelist is Ms. Angelina Dash. He's the project officer of the Center for Communication Governance at the National Law University, Delhi. One of the main goals of this panel is to observe the experiences of different countries on online regulation. Today, we are very honored to be able to hear from experts on their experience from their respective countries. I believe that their experience will be able to serve as a reference for NCC in future policy recommendations. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Godfrey to start our discussions. Thank you.
Again, thank you to NCC and the organizers for setting up this panel and inviting me to speak. So I'll maybe share some experience of the enforcement and of the DSA. So first thing to say is the DSA has been fully enforced for just over 2 years. Some of the provisions came into force 6 months earlier, but for Commission Namian, we've been a Digital Services Commission coordinator officially just for 2 years. So one of the things that we have done, and similarly other digital service coordinators, is to build up our resources, build up our expertise. So my agency, when we were formed just 3 years ago, we had 38 people who, from the predecessor broadcasting authority, we now have nearly 300 people. So one of the experiences we've had is that it's been really easy for us to recruit fantastic people, unlike most public bodies, because the mission the role we have is really attractive. And so we've recruited people from industry, from academia, from other public bodies. We've recruited people internationally. One thing that has been very interesting is the number of people who've joined us who previously worked in trust and safety in the platforms. And they worked in trust and safety because they believed in trust and safety. And I think they felt that they were maybe working for organizations that weren't as committed to trust and safety as they personally were. And they felt that by joining the regulator, they had more chance to make an impact on trust and safety. So that's been really interesting for us. But we've built up both an enforcement, supervision and enforcement arm, and also a policy division. So we, as probably Ireland, the EU's leading digital services coordinator, because of the presence of the large platforms in Ireland, we really wanted to make sure that we had some subject matter expertise. So we've got a children's and vulnerable adults team. We have a team dedicated to the protection of democracy and fundamental rights. And we have a team that deals with other kinds of harms, such as hate speech, misogyny, grooming of young women and children. So we built up that expertise. We've also then really, I suppose the other thing that we had to build up was a complaints department. So we get complaints from Irish users, but more importantly, complaints about the platforms based in Ireland that are gathered in other member states get referred to us. So that's one set of activity, and I think that's been true for us. The European Commission has also had a very substantial increase in its staff devoted to the DSA and DSA enforcement. Then the second thing that's happened has been some guidance notes. So the DSA is very high level in the obligations it places, or in many of the most significant obligations. So there's been a set of, in some places, some guidance about how regulators expect the platforms to comply. So the first was a set of guidance notes about elections and the integrity of elections. That was really prioritized. In fact, I think the first time I met Benoit, he said to me, the European elections are coming a few months after the DSA comes into force. It's going to be the first big test for the DSA. So, so the European Commission had a very good set of guidelines for how platforms should behave in the elections. And since then, those guidelines have been applied. I mean, 27 member states in the EU, there's always an election happening somewhere. And so I think we have established quite a good mechanism for a playbook for how regulators should interact with platforms and other stakeholders in elections. And then the other thing that I think is really something to be proud of has been a set of guidelines about the protection of minors. And those have been developed with a lot of engagement of civil society, and they really set out, I think, for the first time, a really comprehensive set of what does good look like in the protection of minors. So it looks like not having addictive recommender systems, not exposing children to inappropriate content, not exposing children to contact from strange adults, and so forth. So those things have also been good. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, there have been a number of investigations opened and a couple concluded. So there was, the first test was something called TikTok Lite, which was a feature that TikTok wanted to launch, which was really addictive. It was kind of like use TikTok for 4 hours a day for 30 days and get a reward. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was really obviously addictive. And there's an obligation in the DSA on the large platforms to do risk assessments before they launch any major change to their service. And this one, they hadn't even done a risk assessment, and it was withdrawn. TikTok now like to say, aren't they good boys because they withdrew it and they're complying? But really, it's inexcusable that something like that, there wasn't a risk assessment done before that was launched. Since then, there've been a number of other investigations into minor protection, so rabbit hole effects, addictive designs around Meta, for example. There've been investigations launched into Pornhub and other adult services in terms of age assurance. There have been investigations and in fact fines, the first fines imposed on X for some fairly, you might call them more technical breaches. So the blue check mark, which purports to say that an account is verified, but actually doesn't do anything to verify the account, has been found to be a misleading practice. And there's also been some non-compliance by X found in terms of their advertising repository and some of the other transparency requirements. Those are investigations that I've talked about, have all been launched by the European Commission. Commissioner is assisting the European Commission in some of them. We've also have our own investigations launched, some into X, some into other companies to do with a notice and action mechanism. So in the DSA, they're supposed to be easy to report illegal content, and it's supposed to be, and then an action should be taken, and people should be informed of their right to appeal if the action isn't right. So we've done quite a comprehensive project looking across the different platforms based in Ireland, and some of them, many of them we found they either didn't have a reporting mechanism or it was so hidden it was difficult to use. Some of them have changed their practices. Some of them we've decided we need to go into more formal enforcement actions. And then last week we launched our most recent enforcement action, which was to do with Meta. There's an obligation in the DSA that it should be possible for people to configure the recommender systems so that they get a recommender system, a recommender feed that's not based on profiling. And we're concerned that the Meta has used dark patterns. They've designed their user interface in a way to hide this option from users. So that's something we're looking at. So I'll stop there. But there's a lot going on.
好，谢谢Jeremy 啊。
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Jeremy. Your time control is very good. And then afterwards, we will have time for discussions. I would just like to remind our panelists that each of you will have 8 minutes. So Jeremy actually explained to us some of the DSA measures taken in Ireland, and he also gave us examples. Next, I would like to move on to our second panelist, Benoit.
Much. And again, thanks a billion for organizing this conference, which is really a unique opportunity to exchange during the panels and between the panels. Following on what Jeremy said, I wanted to give a French perspective. And I used to always say that ARCOM is a French media regulator, but we are not the French digital service regulator. We are the French player in an EU team, because that's really a key feature of the regulation. When you want to work with digital platform, you have to operate networks, to build coalition, because I guess, be it you are in Taiwan, you are in France, you are in Ireland, we are a medium-sized country facing huge platforms which are global players, and we need to rebalance the power, and the key element to do it is to develop this capacity to act as groups. It's at the heart of the DSA, and it's disturbing in a way, because it means that you have to reinvent your culture as a regulator. As a regulator, normally you are used to have complete autonomy. You have your law, you do your monitoring, you have the enforcement power, you open a case, and you obtain what you are entitled to obtain according to the law. When we apply that to platform in the EU, we had to accept that we were stronger as a network of regulator with shared responsibility. So Jeremy is in charge of the enforcement of the DSA for platform established in Ireland. We are in charge of the enforcement for platform established in France. It sounds easy when you say that, but it means that we have to accept that each one of us are taking responsibility not for the Irish citizen or the French citizen, but for all EU citizens. And that if a French platform operating in Poland is creating an issue in Poland, we'll be the one stepping in. So, in fact, we started the story like Jeremy with a culture, I guess, where in Europe regulators are used to work together, but in different line. And there we realized we needed to create a new culture, and to create a new culture is how we interact with the EU Commission, which usually is a check and balance. We all know we need check and balance, but the check and balance is a mechanism which stops you from time to time. So typically regulators were used to be very united to fight back with the check and balance. And here we needed to do the contrary. We needed to recognize that the EU Commission is the first regulator in charge of the VLOPs, and we all needed to work as a group. So we made incredible effort. We started, in fact, Ireland and France by creating an informal groups of regulators who were sharing this vision. And eventually, we have now a group, we have all the 28 regulators. We are working together through 8 working groups, and each one of those working groups is co-chaired by the EU Commission and by one of the regulators. And we have created those vice chair who are also leading the dynamics together so that we are aligned and we are learning to operate as a group. And it's making really a difference. If I want to give you a specific example, in early January, I was just trying to recover from the new year. New Year was great. And then on January 2nd, a journalist called me saying, what do you think of Grok on X and the fact that you can desnude a woman with a Grok on X? I said, well, I was trying to recover from January 1st, but thank you, I'm back in business. And we started on that day looking at that issue and realizing that we had an issue, that it was spreading very fast in France, and that we had to do something. And to make a long story short, 3 days later, we received guidance from John Evans, who is a board member at Commission Naman, sent to all the regulators, the Digital Service Coordinator of Europe, saying this is what's taking place, this is how we analyze it, this is how we can participate in a global effort to gather evidence, and which will help us to build a case, if need be, against X to document whether there is a breach or not of the DSA. At the same time, in France, we had managed to build the same kind of dynamics, because it's also the issue you have to build the dynamic within your own country, and work with one of our trusted flagger who started issuing a press release explaining that they could help victims to react, to take down the content with this mechanism of trusted flagger, which is a part of the Digital Services Act. And we had also a discussion open with the judiciary, who also opened an investigation to see whether there was a criminal offense according to criminal law. So that's what we are learning after 2 years of the DSA, is to act together and to really leverage the capacities that we have to recreate a balance of power between those big platform global actors on our countries. And it's making the difference because, again, on this specific example, after less than 10 days, Grok, even though they never recognized there were an issue, started to scale back, in fact, a couple of features of the AI to stop the impact of this issue. So I guess that's really what makes the difference. It leads me to a second issue I wanted to share with you, because very often we are being asked, what is the success of the DSA? And people are telling us, you are not putting huge fine to everybody. And we are saying, well, the DSA has not been designed for that. In a way, if at the end of the day we are putting huge fine to all the platforms, it will be a signal we are failing. Because the objective of the DSA is to get the compliance. We want the platform to comply with the regulation. We don't want just to put fines on the companies. So then we have people telling us, well, then the success of the DSA is that hate speech will disappear online, disinformation will disappear. And we're saying, well, no, I suspect the DSA is not that powerful. As long as we are facing Russia, I suspect that we will have disinformation coming from Russia. And that's not the DSA that can stop that. So people are asking me, but so what is the success of the DSA? And it's an easy question, but it's not easy to answer it. And I guess the best answer I've found is that it's to say, well, we will always face information disorders online. Disinformation, hate speech, harassment, fraud. But without the DSA, we felt powerless to face those information disorders. With the DSA, because it allows us to coordinate ourselves, because it decreases asymmetry of information, we feel empowered to face those information disorders. And that's really what we are seeing, is that because we have this mandate and we have this strange feature, as regulator, we are called coordinator, which is unusual. Normally you call regulators authorities or whatever. But here, the key role we have as regulators is to build coordination, to empower people so that we feel empowered to face the difficulties we are facing. And we will continue to face difficulties, because that's how the digital world evolves, is always changing itself, reinventing, creating new issues. And each time we are faster in building responses, in understanding how it's going, what's going on, and that's the key to the solution. Thank you very much.
好，谢谢 Benny。那
Okay, thank you, Bennett. I think that's the case for all countries. The regulators really need to cooperate and partner with other authorities concerned, including judiciary. And he also mentioned that DSA is a very important regulation, which acts as a great reference for us. Now let's take everybody back to Asia. We would like to learn from Korea. Now let's welcome Mr. Park.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm wearing this shirt from APL-IGF Taipei 2016. There was a time that the internet was considered a great democratizer, so that it was nominated for, well, there was a movement to nominate the internet for Nobel Peace Prize. Things have changed. Now the internet has become a quote-unquote a dangerous space that we have to make safe. I want to commend NCC and all the stakeholders in Taiwan for sticking to multi-stakeholderism throughout the ups and downs of the history of the internet. We believe that this order on the internet is a technological problem, and we should respond with technology. And the presentations of Jeremy and Benoit already show that the European stakeholders are focusing on balancing internet freedom with information integrity. So the governments are not really involved in specific content moderation or ordering people or telling people what not to or what to communicate online. So then the billion-dollar question remains how to conduct moderation at scale, at a scale that matches the scale of disinformation. And I believe there is a system that has cracked this question. Let's take DMCA, which is the American copyright law. The system there, let me explain, is that as long as platforms take down all noticed contents, the contents that someone complained as copyright infringing, as long as platforms do that and restore all appealed contents. So if the poster of the content request restoration, then platforms restore those contents. As long as platforms continue to do both of these things, go through the motion of doing this, then there will be exemption from liability for all the illegal contents online. That was the rule that was made into law in the DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Now, the carrot is the exemption from liability. It set up strong incentive for platforms to engage in massive moderation of copyright infringing contents. Now, Trump administration has criticized DSA for being censorship. Do you know how many postings were taken down under DMCA, the American Copyright Law, in 2025 alone? 3.5 billion postings, right? So when it comes to the balance between free expression and information integrity, it's not the amount of postings that we should look at. We should look at who takes it down, what is taken down, and for what reason it is taken down. Now, so many postings, like 3.5 billion postings were taken down under DMCA. Does that cause any problem with the freedom of speech, right? But as I said, if the author of the posting appeal the moderation, then platforms now restore them without question, right? So that's how freedom of speech problem is resolved. So if the authors don't feel that their rights are violated, then they'll do nothing. Now, then you will wonder, okay, well, if a platform should restore all the contents that are appealed, then how about people appealing, right? How about people requesting to restore illegal contents, right? But the reality is that only 5 to 10%, now even lower percentage of taken down contents are appealed. So the end result is that 90 to 95%, now even higher percentage of noticed illegal contents are taken down, and nobody is complaining about freedom of speech when 3.5 billion postings are being taken down. Now, I know there are European representatives here, and I may not be in the right position to claim to know more about the European system, but all I can say is I know what I know. I believe that DSA attempts to replicate the DMCA's success in content moderation, this massive moderation of illegal contents, and replicate that success in other areas than copyright. So that's why DSA retains the liability exemption from 2000 e-commerce directive, which exempts platforms from liability for the contents that they are not aware of. And it adds the due diligence requirement for all moderation and restoration requests. DSA itself does not set up obligation to take down illegal content. Now, Germany's law, NetzDG, used to do that, but after DSA passed, NetzDG was revised to remove that. And what if there are disputes between the author of the postings and the complainants about the postings? Then they go into disputes. I'll just use 2 more minutes. So, did DSA succeed in the effort to replicate the success of the MCA in combating illegal contents without causing friction with the freedom of speech? Well, I believe so. For the 2 years that DSA was in enforcement, there were 3 billion moderations. And out of 3 billion moderations, 5.5% of them were appealed by the authors of the postings. Out of that, 30% were restored. Now, out of 30% restored, only 0.003%, only in 0.003%, the complainants requested remoderation, right? Like taking down again. And they all went into mediation as required by DSA. Now, has any lawsuit resulted out of the mediation? So far, none. That shows that the DSA has achieved at least a similar result as the DMCA in encouraging the platforms to engage in massive moderation of illegal contents that are noticed by that are complained by others. Now, Korea doesn't have that system, and if I have time later, I'll go into how to replicate this success of DSA, DMCA in the Asian context. Thank you.
好，谢谢那个
Thank you very much, Professor Park. You mentioned DMCA and DSA, and then I have prepared a question for you. I'd like to ask, what is the situation currently in South Korea? Next, I would like to move on to India. So I would like to invite our next panelist, Angelina.
Today, I'll be talking about online safety legislation and implementation in India. And in India, online safety is dispersed across different legislations that focus on platform governance and data protection. So I'll just quickly change the slide. So in the interest of time, I will not be reading the full title of each law. You can refer to the slides and also the booklet. So I'll be starting with the Information Technology Act from 2000, which was the core framework that regulates entities on the internet. And the law provided a definition of intermediaries and also provided a provision for safe harbor, which is provided under Section 79 and exempts intermediaries from liability in certain cases. We then have the IT rules from 2021, which significantly altered the landscape in India by sort of bringing the regulation of online intermediaries, digital news organizations, and OTT video streaming under one regime. The framework also brought into place several key features, such as additional obligations for significant social media intermediaries, and also tracing requirements, automated content filtering, and other safeguards like grievance redressal mechanisms. We then have the most recent IT amendment rules from 2026, which is India's deepfake regulation and was notified earlier this year. The framework seeks to mitigate the risks and harms which have been arising from the proliferation and circulation of deepfakes. And this is done through provisions which require proactive detection and labeling of synthetic information. I'll now be situating the impact and operationalization of these provisions by examining them in two very distinct contexts. The first, I'll be breaking down the TikTok ban in India as a specific illustration of platform regulation. Second, I will be broadening the scope a little bit by considering online safety concerns in relation to dating apps as a wider category of social media platforms. So when it comes to understanding the TikTok ban in India, in April 2019, the TikTok app was temporarily taken down from the Google Play Store and Apple App Store in India. This was following a direction linked to the Madras High Court over concerns that it was being used to spread child pornography. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology then instructed Google and Apple to remove the app from their app stores. However, once TikTok implemented certain content moderation features, the app was restored. However, in 2020, TikTok was permanently banned in India along with 58 other Chinese apps under Section 69A of the IT Act, and this provision essentially empowers the government to block content on the internet. This ban was on account of the apps being, to quote, prejudicial to the sovereignty and integrity of India, defense of India, security of state and public order. This ban was against the backdrop of India-China border clashes and broader geopolitical tensions and continues to remain banned till date. I'll now be talking about understanding online safety in the context of dating apps. So globally, dating platforms have often posed complex safety risks, and when we think about India, concerns about the safety of women and gender minorities on dating platforms are increasingly coming into focus. Women have reported experiencing cyberstalking, doxing, gendered hate speech, and the unsolicited sharing of explicit images on dating platforms. Many of these risks and harms often include those that go beyond simply in app interactions due to factors like conversations between users sort of transitioning to other platforms or even offline interactions. In a study which took place in India, women participants have talked about how men who faced rejection on dating platforms often tracked them down on other social media platforms like Facebook and harassed them with repeated friend requests. I myself have had instances where, maybe there's someone who gave me a like on an app or someone whom I chose not to match with or chose to later unmatch with, and then they sent me follow requests on professional networking platforms. Moreover, social taboos against dating in Indian society can often both result in women sort of withdrawing from online dating after repeated experiences of sexual abuse and intrusive messages, and can also preclude women and gender minorities from even reporting such instances of sexual violence, specifically which stem from interactions on dating platforms. I'll then be moving on to data protection, and here we then move on to online safety in the context of data protection and data privacy. So India quite recently introduced its data protection framework, which includes both the data protection law as well as which is the DPDPA, as well as the accompanying rules which operationalize the Parent Act. And this framework seeks to contribute to online safety and mitigate data-linked online harms by regulating how personal data is collected, stored, processed, and shared by digital platforms. I'll now very briefly be looking at children's online safety. I know we had a session on age verification yesterday as well, where I spoke about very specific challenges from India, the unique context and considerations. So in this portion, I will be trying not to sort of replicate that, but rather I'll again be sort of tracing how India's laws protect children online. And predominantly, online safety for children has been governed by the IT Act and the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act of 2012. And these laws have primarily framed the protection of children through provisions prohibiting and criminalizing CSAM, which is referred to as child pornography under these frameworks, and related forms of online sexual exploitation. With the introduction of India's data protection law, children's safety was also brought under the data protection framework. And again, with social media bans gaining traction, this is also something that's being proposed in Indian context as well. Again, I'll not be replicating the challenges from relating to age verification in the context of social media bans, but the fact remains that there are challenges with social media bans beyond age verification alone. So in India, currently, we have multiple states which have been proposing social media bans, and the challenge with such a fragmented approach could impact both applicability as well as raise concerns and limited clarity regarding how these bans will be enforced in terms of whom the onus is going to be placed on in terms of age verification within these bans. Another consideration is that as per India's data protection law, which is yet to be fully enforced, even once children are past an identified age threshold, they will still need parental consent to access most of these platforms until they turn 18. So, this could mean that parents may choose to exercise caution in a manner that disregards their own child's individual agency and capacity. Or on the flip side, they may even assume that a social media platform is now safe merely because it is no longer banned by the law in their state. And in the latter case, I'd like to flag that I'm not critiquing the decision to allow access, but questioning whether a parent then in all cases is truly being able to make an informed decision. The real problem that policymakers are attempting to address relates to how we can safeguard children from very real online harms. But banning social media bans doesn't solve for these concerns, as these are risks that will likely continue to exist in different ways and capacities when children succeed in evading social media bans. They may even continue to arise after they cross either the threshold of 13 or 15 or 16, and they may still persist even after they have become an adult in the eyes of the law. So, a common thread linking the harms discussed in relation to dating platforms and those affecting children online is the need for more meaningful platform accountability. And this is significant given that both digital platforms and online safety risks are increasingly cross border and transnational in nature. So, I'm sorry, I'll just take a minute more. And yes, so it starts with the harms that occur when digital platforms and AI systems, which have been designed in the global north, are deployed then in global majority contexts such as India. So, multinational corporations often have limited incentives to contextualize organizational practices to the cultural values of the country to which they are expanding. And this can then result in the harms that I talked about. Moreover, fragmented limitations in capacity, both in terms of technical capacity as well as regulatory capacity, can make jurisdictions in the global south, global majority, more vulnerable to harms stemming from AI systems which have been developed in the global north. And I'm happy to expand on that a little later. And these harms also get exacerbated and cannot be effectively litigated upon due to challenges in aligning domestic laws with international frameworks. Moreover, cross border digital platforms often suffer from challenges in affixing accountability and liability for the occurrence of these harms. So, there is a need, therefore, for institutional designs to allocate responsibility, merge risks, and mitigate challenges stemming from collective action. And there is a need also for shared responsibilities and fiduciary duties of multiple actors to be clearly articulated. Thank you.
Thank
you very much, Angelina. You have explained to us the implementation and practice of online safety in India. It's a very clear explanation of what's happening. Our panelists have explained their different practices and implementation in their respective countries. Now we move on to our Q&A session. If we have questions on the floor, please step on to the mic. And we also open the questions to our viewers from online. But as the moderator, I would like to ask our panelists a few questions. First, I would like to address this question to Jeremy. You mentioned that the DSA in Ireland, and there is a coordination agency, and they work very closely together with the EU. I look at your background. You are also head of agencies in other industries. So my question is, how do the regulator work together with the regulators of very specific industries? How do you work together in order to solve the online security problem? 谢谢，感谢。
In Ireland, we have something we call the Digital Regulators Group, and that includes the Data Protection Authority in Ireland. Now, like us, like the DSA, the data protection world also operates on the basis of a lead regulator. So the Irish Data Protection Authority is the lead regulator for the same platforms that we are the digital services coordinator of origin for. So, so they are involved. Then our Competition and Consumer Protection Agency, Commission, is also a member of the Digital Regulators Group. They are a competent authority under the Digital Services Act for some of the articles that relate specifically to online marketplaces. And then the Communications Regulator is also a member of the Digital Regulators Group. So between us, we work on things like resourcing. We all need to have technical skills. We're all very interested in AI and getting competencies under the AI Act. So those issues together. We work on information sharing. And again, Benoit was talking about some defects in the French law about permitting information sharing. We also have the same issue. We can share information in some circumstances, but it's not as broad as we would like. And then finally, I think we do get, we don't use the group for this, but we do have individual instances. So Benoit talked a bit about Grok. In Ireland, we had a very similar experience. But what we did was we pulled together locally the law enforcement agency, the data protection, the hotline.ie, which is the NGO where people can report things to. So we work very closely with those other agencies. May I just take 1 minute to talk a little bit about Professor Park's, just a bit of a response to Professor Park, if that's okay. I wanted to maybe, as people in Asia and other parts of the world think about how to do this, not to get too excited about moderation as the only tool. So I would say what part of our experience is the kind of the moderation. There are actually, I think, probably the requirements for transparency about terms and conditions, and there is a requirement to enforce those terms and conditions through taking down content that doesn't comply. And also for the large platforms, they have to mitigate the risk of dissemination of illegal content, which also I think implies a takedown. I think what we also find is that the loss of the exemption from liability is really important in copyright, where you have some very well-resourced, say, players in the music industry who are going to impose consequences if you don't take it down. But when you get to things like hate speech, where the loss of liability might imply a criminal sanction, it's really hard to imagine for that to bite because of all the necessity to prove intent. But what I would say is, apart from moderation, the thing that we would really encourage people to focus on is things like the recommender systems and on service design issues, because harmful content is only harmful if it is seen by people. So people talk about the difference between freedom of reach and freedom of speech, and certainly much of the harm occurs not so much when people post bad content, but when the recommender systems amplify the bad content, and when the bad content or when content that's not suitable for children is viewed by children. So I think those wider issues are as important or more important than just regulating how moderation works.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. And my second question to Benoit, because when you deliver your presentation, I noticed something that's really important. You think that DSA is to provide the compliance and not to penalize or fine these platforms or companies. And DSA actually provides a power for us to solve the risk or problem challenges online. I would like to know the implementation of DSA in France, and also in France, because DSA is a regulation of the whole Europe or EU. Are there any issues that DSA cannot resolve specifically in France? Are there any risk or issues like that? Thank you.
DSA is not a silver bullet for everything, clearly, but we are also trying to. It's a tough question. The thing, what we can do with the DSA is really collectively share experiences and exercise a higher pressure on platform. So a good example are protection of minors. In every country in the EU, minors are under threat in a way. By pulling together resources, we have the capacity to extract a better answer from the platform. Then there are some issues which are always specific to a given country. And you have to start from where you are, and it's up to you to solve the issue. The obvious example for us is how do you protect an election? Most elections are based in our country. So in these instances, we try to reverse the system in a way, saying the center is France, not the EU, because election will be taking place in France. And we try to learn to apply what we have learned from the DSA. So we build a coalition locally, try to bring everybody around the table to see what are the threats that we are facing under election. And then we call on the EU to support us, because we have discovered historically that when we started working with the platform on protecting our elections, they were somewhat patronizing with us, telling us, oh, in France you have an election every other year. When you are a platform, we have election every month because we are operating worldwide. We are going to explain to you how we are better than you in protecting your own election. We were somewhat surprised, I must say, but we managed to reverse these dynamics because now when we have an election in France, we call in the platform, but with the platform there is also the EU Commission on most often the Irish regulator coming in, and they are following how they are helping to defend election across Europe. So we are capitalizing. So they can say to TikTok, say, oh, by the way, you screwed up in Romania. We don't want you to screw it up again in the next election in Ireland or in France. But that's really, there's on plenty of those issues, the question is really, the platforms are global, but the information disorders that are triggering are localized in each of our member states, in our own culture, in our own languages. So that's where there is no substitute for national commitments to face those issues. And we have to keep that in mind. So it's a tricky exercise in a way because you're always trying to think global, saying, oh, I have to be global to be relevant with those actors, but then switch back, say, no, we have to be extremely local because the issues are local and we have to answer the expectation of our citizens. That would be my answer. Thank you.
好，谢谢 Benoit。
Okay, thank you, Benoit. Yes, it is a tough question, but thank you for your very detailed answer. And during the pre-briefing, I have very high expectation of Mr. Park's presentation because he talked about the learnings in different areas or different parts of the world. So can you specifically talk about how Korea learn or simulate the situation in the Western world to improve? And also, maybe you can respond to Jeremy's comments. Thank you.
If you can bring back the fourth slide, oh yeah, I'll speak in a while. It's being brought up. Okay. So Jeremy's comment He took words out of my mouth. I cannot agree more. The reason I'm making this presentation in Asian countries is exactly because of that. Because Asian governments are using DSA as a justification for censorship, actually, for creating or converting communication ministries, which were previously all technical, into state-sponsored content moderation bodies. And I'm trying to show how the US and EU are not doing that. And yet they are tackling the information integrity problem without causing friction with free speech. And Korea is one country that is not listening to me, of course. So as you might have learned by now, the notice and action or notice and takedown, it is supposed to be a condition for obtaining liability exemption. It's not supposed to be mandatory. Once it is made into mandatory thing, what happens, as it happened in Korea, is that whenever somebody calls something illegal, there is an asymmetry of incentives that the platforms face. They would rather take down, even if it may be lawful content, because they want to avoid the liability. So the incentive to take down is much greater than incentive to retain. So many lawful postings are taken down if notice and takedown system is instituted as mandatory. On top of that, Korea maintains Korean Communication Standard Commission, which is a government body that issues takedown notices. And that is that now once you set up a administrative body to do that, a lot of politics is added. A lot of people want to make the government more, I guess, proactive in taking down. So as a result, the standard of moderation is this: when it is necessary for sound communication ethics. I mean, how vague is that? Ethical standard changes from individual to individual. The government is using this as a standard to take things down, but that's what happens when things are left to the administrative authorities. So I don't want to spend too much time. There's a question from the audience as well. So what I wanted to say is that DSA does not create a newly regulated category of speech, and DSA is not a content moderation body, and DSA does not impose liability on platforms for user-created content. DSA requires platforms to engage users and complaints with the due diligence. These are the points that Korea can and Asian governments can start instituting by removing the administrative body censorship, and also by instituting liability exemption based on notice and takedown. That liability exemption will give sort of strong incentives for platforms to engage in massive moderation of illegal content. Yes.
好，谢谢那个 Park 哈。那我们最后
Okay, thank you, Park. My last question to Angelina, because in your PowerPoint slides, you mentioned the global north. in terms of digital platform or AI system, they're created by the North. And how would that impact India? You said you posed a challenge to India. You said India is considered part of the global South. I'm quite interested in this topic. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, and I'm glad we can talk about this because I couldn't go into a lot of detail in the presentation due to time constraints. But I think in answering your question, I'd like to draw upon two buckets of research. I think one would be in terms of the research we came across when we were working on platform accountability and dating apps, and also the research which we carried out when we were working on operationalizing AI safety across the AI lifecycle. So when it comes to dating apps and the kind of harms that manifest there, I think two very specific examples that would come up would be in the context of content moderation, and one would be in relation to human content moderators, where there could be many nuances, many cultural contexts, considerations relating to maybe caste, religion, and gender, which these nuances can get very easily get missed by human content moderators. And we also came across research, for example, where male gig workers had been hired to carry out these content moderation practices, and there were many innocuous comments which were actually harmful for women in Indian contexts, but these nuances could not be successfully inferred by the content moderators. Second would be the challenges that come up in terms of automated content moderation, and this is specifically research we came across in the context of low resource languages, which could include languages such as Tamil and Swahili. And here the challenge was that languages like English have a very fixed word order, whereas languages such as Tamil, Swahili, other low resource languages have different linguistic properties, which could mean that maybe when these automated content moderation tools work, the challenge that comes up is that a word that might relate to sexual harassment and the kind of harms that women and gendered minorities face, it might simply go undetected just because of the way the word exists in that language. Second, I'd also like to talk about the safety harms that come up across the AI lifecycle. So in our report, we had essentially looked at each stage of the AI lifecycle and how safety harms manifest, and with a very specific global South and India lens. So when it came to something like the inception stage, for example, we had challenges where the priorities of the global North might sort of shape the priorities of what AI safety looks like. And there could also be limited participation from users from the global South and marginalized communities within these jurisdictions in developing and sort of co-designing what AI models look like at the inception stage. And then, of course, when it comes to data collection and the preparation stage, we have challenges in terms of transparency, explainability, and linguistic diversity can again hinder the accessibility of what transparency and explainability disclosures look like in these contexts, especially for individuals whose data is actually being collected and used. In the model design and training stage, again, risks mitigation strategies such as adversarial robustness, and I can talk about that offline as well, they're often less useful due to limited existing digital data in the global South. And then very quickly, two more stages where we have verification and validation, where the training and testing teams might not be engaged locally, and they might have English-centric benchmarks, and in the absence of those global South contextualization, the performance might degrade. And lastly, when we have the deployment and post-deployment stages, some of the challenges again relate back to low infrastructure availability and challenges in developing regional accountability mechanisms, and also again inadequate reporting tools. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting insight. Next, we have a question from the floor. We still have some time, so I would take the questions. Yes, please make your question short.
The opportunity to ask, I guess, a question. Very exciting and very broad discussion on the topic of moderating harm, and building on, I guess, the dialogue between Jeremy and Park, and also what Benoit mentioned, that the DSA is not a silver bullet, right? There's the DMA, there's other tools to deal with this. So this dimension of content moderation is not the only tool that we have, and that's why I wanted to maybe ask the panel of thoughts on other tools. Jeremy mentioned that you're looking into the feed recommendation algorithm. I guess Park was highlighting that the problem with censorship, and highlighted the topic of the freedom of reach and freedom of speech dynamics. In that sense, what do you think about interoperability as a tool? As in, the reason why abuse or harm is created a lot of times, it's because there's an abuse on the freedom of reach. Because as Jeremy mentioned, if it's not seen, it's not harm. There is no harm. If there's more interoperability enforced between platforms so that they cannot remain walled gardens. Walled gardens essentially is the reason why people have a problem a lot of times, because
the time limit, please.
Yeah. So
now
so
your problem, please. Your question, please.
Yeah, that is the question. What do you think about interoperability as one of the tools?
Jeremy to answer.
To the general panel,
who can
I guess.
answer? Oh, yeah, Jeremy.
Thanks very much, Edmund. So just a broad thing, yes, there's a range of tools. Regulation is actually not the only tool at all. So I would be remiss of me not to mention media literacy, digital literacy, AI literacy. It's really important that users understand how they can cause harm, understand how they can protect themselves from harm. So I think that's very important. On your question of interoperability, I think it operates at a slightly different level. There's an incentive structure for platforms to optimize their recommendation algorithms for engagement. And that, I think, is the root cause of a lot of the reasons why the feeds are toxic, why they care maybe less about protecting children than they might do, and so forth. So the interoperability operates mostly in the kind of competition side. How do we make sure that that these big platforms operating in two-sided markets with big network effects don't achieve dominant positions in markets that they can then abuse? But one of the types of abuse you get is optimizing services for advertisers. So what the platforms are doing is they're delivering their users to advertisers. And so if you have interoperability, their ability to degrade the user experience in order to better exploit them for their advertising business is reduced. So I think interoperability can have an effect on online safety. But I think it has an effect on online safety by making the markets more competitive and enabling users to switch from one platform to another.
Park, yeah. 1 minute, please, because of time, shortly.
Talking about enforcement, if you're talking about interoperability in enforcement, I don't think it will give sufficient space for people to express themselves in choosing different platforms. Now, if you're talking about platform interoperability, I think that is a challenge that we have to face, because squarely and actually OpenNet's top agenda is actually interoperability, because the reason we are so worried about these big platforms is because of their dominance. If the internet is as we imagined in earlier years, where we have like 100 different platforms that we communicate with one another, we will not be so worried about information integrity, even recommendation system. If people have freedom to choose from different platforms, our conversation will be wildly different. But we cannot leave the platforms that we are in. Why not? Because platforms are not interoperable. Because once you leave Facebook, you lose all the friends on your Facebook. But if all the platforms are interoperable with one another, where you can remain friends with your Facebook friends, even when you are on Blue Sky or other platforms, the conversation we are having will be wildly different. So platform interoperability, yes, I think it's a fundamental solution to the problem we are facing.
Okay, thank you. We have another guest. Please say your question quickly, okay?
Of course.
Shortly,
Thank
okay.
you, Commissioner. My name is Samaya. I'm from the Global Network Initiative. And thank you for a wonderful panel discussion, and to Professor Park in particular for bringing up the challenge in the Asian context. I, too, within my organization, work a lot on the Asia-Pacific region, and I'm sort of reflecting on what you said. One reality is that laws such as the DSA or the OSA in the UK and Australia are sort of used as a disguise or mask or justification for legitimizing censorship regimes. But the parallel reality is also that regulators within these contexts are not very familiar. There's a knowledge gap on what exactly systems and processes mean. There are templates that in the EU, in America, but because we're in a room full of my wonderful colleagues, a lot of representation from regulatory bodies, I'm curious how you would sort of think about or suggest more collaboration or collaboratory sort of regulatory implementation between regions in a way that can improve understanding of what we mean by systems and processes approaches. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Which panelist to answer?
It's an open question, but
Okay.
anyway.
Okay, and then one panel. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I guess you give me the opportunity to mention, I wanted to do it earlier, we have to work together because even though we are in different regions of the world, we are facing the same platform. And we have several networks which are created or initiative. Of course, for me, I have to mention the GOSREN, Global Online Safety Regulatory Network, which was brilliantly created by Ofcom and the E-Safety Commissioner of Australia. It's perfect, except the acronym GOSREN. It's terrible. But we learned that that's where we create value, because we can share experiences, we can benefit from the first analysis coming from Ofcom with the Online Safety Act, with DSA, we are learning from the Australian. The other one for me is the initiative under the UNESCO partnership, where it's always impressive to see how when we meet together, we are facing the same issues and we are learning from each other. Thank you.
OK， 好，那今天谢谢4位。
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our 4 panelists and our very distinguished audience. It's a very interesting back and forth, and I learned very much. There are many issues that I've never thought of before, and you brought them up. We can also see some challenges faced by different countries. We can also reflect on these challenges in Taiwan. Once again, I would like to thank our 4 panelists for their very insightful sharing. Thank you very much.
好，我们掌声谢谢，就是王委员的主持以及本场与谈人精彩的对谈。那也请我们舞台上的贵宾，我们稍作停留，一起看向我们前面的摄影师，让我们来一张珍贵的合影。May we invite all speakers on stage to stay for a moment and look towards the photographer for a group photo, please. Thank you very much. You may now return to your seats.